Hey guys and gals, this is E.H. Ivins, and this is the next edition of The Dad You Wish You Had. That's me, E.H. Ivins, or as you can call me, Uncle Herbie. Okay, so the question for this particular episode is about goal setting. I happen to have a young teenage neighbor. Her name is Lee. She is aware of the podcast. She came up to me the other day. She said, you know what I'd like you to answer on the next podcast or in one soon. And since this is the very beginning of the podcast, I have lots of room to get every question on that's sent to me. Oh, by the way, before I go any further, look above my head. Text to my other dad to the number above, and I will answer your questions, just to remind you. Okay, so here we go. Lee wanted to know about goal setting. You know, as a young teenage girl, and in her case, particularly from an Asian family, she's being driven very, very hard to set high goals and to achieve them. And I understand that. I have raised my children around, I should say, and I too was raised by parents that were extremely goal-oriented. You know, my children, particularly my younger two children, were more academic than athletic, and that tends to lead to a lot of goal setting, at least academically speaking, and pushing very, very hard. And they went to private school. And when children go to private school, one of the things you find out right away about private school is the great thing about private school is that the parents are very involved. And the other thing you find out is that the bad thing about a private school is that the parents are very involved. The problem with parents being very involved in something that they're paying for is that they demand results. And that demand falls on basically two entities. One is the teacher, him or herself. And of course, that's another story for another day. If you're a teacher and want me to share my feelings about that, feel free to ask the question. And to the students, that's what we're going to talk about today. What is it like to be driven to set goals? And not just academic goals, professional goals, athletic goals, goals in general and in life. People are always being driven. Every self-help book I've ever seen is all about, well, not everyone, but most, is about goal setting, about achieving your goals, about, you know, call it a dream, call it a goal, call it whatever you want. Your ambition. Goal setting is a huge part of our culture. And Lee, God bless her, being a young woman, and I believe Lee's about 14 years old, is being driven crazy by her parents, who, as I said, are Asian, like I was driven crazy by my parents, who were Jewish, and I'm sure a lot of you were driven crazy by your parents, regardless of your ethnic or racial background. You know, achieving parents tend to want more for their children. And, you know, 2 plus 2 equaling 4, for most people, that comes down to goal setting. But I strongly, strongly disagree with this. Now, I have, over the years, given many, many, many talks to particularly graduate students, and particularly at the University of Arizona at the Carl Eller School of Business, to graduate students, because I had, Tucson, where I lived for many, many years before the shit hit the fan. I was a big fish in a small pond. I had a lot of friends through the university. One thing led to another. And because, and you know, a little braggy, I'm a very good public speaker. I was invited to speak to a lot of these classes, and this is the specific talk that I'd give. I'm going to make it much shorter today than I would if I were speaking for, you know, an hour and a half to a group of graduate students, but you'll get the gist right away. And I would always walk into the classroom, and this is germane to the point, I would walk into the classroom, I'd say, okay, raise your hands. How many of you plan to be millionaires by the time you're 30? Every hand in the room would go up. I mean, these were MBA students at the Carl Eller School mostly, and you know, that was the ticket to ride, was how to be a millionaire, you know, and of course today it would be at least a 10 or maybe even a 20 millionaire to really have serious money. But anyway, I digress. That's another talk about inflation for another day. But anyway, every hand would go up, and I'd say, okay, look around the room at all those hands up. You're all idiots, because the only thing that you know about any plan is that it won't turn out that way. Whenever you make a plan, so let's start with, here comes the actual advice. Number one, you can't make plans because plans never turn out the way you plan them. I mean, oh yeah, you can plan, for example, my family and I are renting a house in the mountains for Thanksgiving, and you know, that kind of plan is fine, you know, because people have to make their, you know, flight arrangements and so on and so forth, and we're all getting together and going to have Thanksgiving in the mountains, which I'm very excited about, but I digress. That's an okay plan. When I talk about planning, but planning your life and your career and what you're going to be involves goal setting, and the minute you start setting goals, only 2 possibilities are even in the cards at all. Okay, the third possibility, which is it turns out the way you planned, cannot happen. It's either going to turn out better or it's going to turn out worse, but it's not going to turn out as you planned it. And as far as goal setting goes, you're either going to achieve it or not. Okay, now here's the thing. The first reason I can't stand goal setting is because it's the ticket to the psychiatrist's couch when you get older. In other words, if you set your goals too high, and those of us, and look, I told you that the dad you wish you had is a politically incorrect zone, so here we go. Particularly from an Asian or a Jewish background, from parents who culturally were raised to drive our children crazy, something that I had to fight and break the habit of myself in raising my own children. You are being driven mercilessly to set goals that are higher than what you might otherwise set them. And if you don't achieve those goals, that's going to lead to a sense of failure. And if you continually do that and continually set high goals that you don't achieve, sooner or later, when you become an adult, I'm speaking to Lee now, you're going to end up talking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and taking Prozac or whatever the modern version of it is at the time that you were in therapy, because that's where you're headed. Because goal setting too high is a constant reaffirmation that you're not good enough if you don't hit those goals. So, but the only other alternative is to set the goal too low. And if you set the goal too low, you consistently underachieve. You don't do as much as you could do. Okay, so setting a goal in that respect is insane. You're either going to end up completely disappointed or completely underachieving because you're not going to hit the goal. It's just not going to happen. You know, men plan and God laughs. Okay, that's number one. Number one is I don't want you to end up in the psychiatrist's couch. Number two is when you set a goal, you tend to become myopic. When I say you, we as human beings tend to become myopic, which means we run like we have blinders on, like we're horses, you know, racing in a race with blinders on so we can't see the other horses. Well, that also means we can't see the other opportunities that are being presented to us. You know, life, from the most unsuspecting places, the greatest things can arise in life, but you've got to be open. And in order to be open, you can't be setting goals, because if you get myopic and you're running with your blinders on, and over here on one side is this terrific opportunity to really experience something phenomenal and to achieve something phenomenal and really do something, you know, out of the ordinary, you won't do it. You won't even become aware of it because you're so focused on those goals. And then also, and the last thing I'm going to bring out about goal setting is it's the recipe for a really uninteresting person. You know, when you go to a party, and Lee, you're very, very young, so you're not going to cocktail parties, but you will. You go to kids' parties, and even now, even as a teenager, and those of you who are watching this as adults know this is true too, when you go to a party, is the most interesting person the person that's the most myopic goal setter, or the one that's kind of interesting to talk to, has done a million little things and has a story about everything? I mean, who are you drawn to? I mean, are you drawn to the myopic goal setter who maybe has achieved everything, but you know, this is it. You know, like they're brilliant at this one thing, but nothing else. So that's all they can talk about. You know, maybe they're a terrific, for an example, when I lived in Tucson, the University of Arizona has a wonderful optical sciences department, maybe the best in the world. They were one of the prime developers of the Hubble Space Telescope. And I think of the Watt telescope that's up now, or I think it's the Watt telescope or the Webb telescope. Is it the Webb? Correct me. Let me know. I think it's the Webb. Anyway, neither here nor there. But so I knew a lot of optical scientists, and they fell into two groups: the ones that were well adjusted and the ones that weren't. And the ones that weren't were the ones that were in many ways in every way they were wound up tighter than ticks. You know, they were like winding a rubber band up, and all they wanted to talk about was optical science, optical science, optical science. Well, that's great, except that's no fun to play golf with. I mean, and life is about relationships and about family and about marriage and children and everything else. And it's wonderful that you're terrific at your career, and it's wonderful that you find your career interesting, but it's not wonderful or interesting to anybody else. And so by becoming a fanatical goal setter, you tend to become so focused on what you're doing that you become uninteresting in everything else. Okay, so let's do a quick review and then we're going to be out. 1, don't set goals because men plan and God laughs. It's either going to turn out better or worse, and you're going to end up either in the psychiatrist's couch or on Prozac or both. Secondly, by setting a goal too high or too low, you're going to drive yourself crazy and become myopic and make yourself uninteresting and then ruin your social life. And why would you want to do any of that? So the only goal you should set, by the way, so how do you plan your life ahead? You don't plan it. You just say onward and upward. And everything that you do, and in everything that you try, and in everything that you take up, whether it's profession or hobby, do it the best you possibly can, and the rest will take care of itself. Do everything you can with excellence, and then the excellence, whatever that is for you, will take care of itself. Just always go at everything I'm not going to go at it, pardon my language. I'm going to go at it full throttle. Okay, so my advice to you, Lee, is try a lot of things. Don't get, especially young, don't get caught up in goals, especially when you're young. Try lots of things, look at lots of things, but everything you try, give it 100%. If you take up playing a musical instrument, really practice and take up the musical instrument. If you're going to teach yourself a foreign language, whatever it might be, whatever it is in life that you want to experience, do it all the way, professional or personal, and the rest will take care of itself. Take a bite out of life, like out of a juicy watermelon, and let the juice just run down your face and just think to yourself, God, that was sweet. But if you bought a crappy watermelon, then you say, oh, the hell with it, and go on and try something else. Don't keep trying the same damn watermelon. It's not going to get better. Was that a clumsy metaphor or what? Anyway, end the story. Remember, as I wrap up today, look above my head, text me if you have a question that you'd like me to answer. As long as it isn't politics or religion, I'll answer it, okay? So it cannot be too embarrassing, weird, out there, whatever it is. Baby, at 63 years old, I am really, I know, and I kind of look like him too, the most interesting man in the world, like the guy in the beer commercials. So anyway, to make a long story short, try me. You're going to love the answer. Text the question to me, and it's anonymous, and I'll answer the question. Secondly, please subscribe. Obviously, hit the subscribe button, hit a notification button, and join me. I'll be doing this twice a week. We're going to put up 2 every single week, forever and ever and ever, I hope. And I hope that you enjoy checking it out. And that's it for today. Thanks very, very much for joining me. And until next time, this is E.H. Ivins, your Uncle Herbie, the dad you wish you had, saying adios.